Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's meetup. On today's agenda, Scott, Chris Fox, Chris Biscaglia, Walt, and Lindsay will be providing an overview of what's coming in our June release, and we'll also be discussing events that are going on for the ArcGIS for Local Government group at the 2018 User Conference. With that said, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Scott.
Okay, thanks, Heather, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Today we wanted to give you a quick update or a sneak peek of the work we've been doing heading into the June 2018 release. And we're about 2 weeks away from that release, and so you're getting a sneak peek of a lot of the content that we'll be shipping here in the next couple weeks. We'll also take a minute to just highlight some of the events and activities that are going on at the UC, and if you're fortunate enough to join us in San Diego, we do really hope that we can get together and talk about the work you're doing, and ultimately end with just a few thoughts on what we're thinking about for the second half of this year. So as Heather mentioned, we would like to keep this as interactive as possible on a virtual meeting like this. So if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to stop us and ask. We'll try to address it as soon as we can and right as we're presenting the content. Before we jump in, what I'd like to do is just start by saying thank you. You know, we've seen a great deal of different implementations of the ArcGIS for Local Government solutions over the last year, and here's just a small smattering of examples that we found from the community. If I start in the lower left, you'll see that many communities have been leveraging the solutions we provide to help modernize their public engagement, and there's a couple examples from Houston, who used Adopta to roll out a whole campaign to prevent storm drain flooding. The City of Omaha is working with CityWorks and the Citizen Problem Reporter solution to provide a comprehensive problem reporting offering. We've had other communities like the City of Boston work with us over the last year on a whole new comprehensive set of offerings for right-of-way permitting, which we released earlier this year. The City and County of Indianapolis took some of our public engagement offerings and really modernized the way they get feedback during their land use and public comment process, and really are using the feedback they get through this public engagement application to drive future land use plans and future transportation plans for the community. And we've also seen implementations of the solutions for more tactical or strategic initiatives like homelessness. The Riverside County used the homeless solutions to conduct their point-in-time counts and ultimately get real-time statistics on homeless populations in the community. And so we've seen a lot of different implementations, and these were just a few. And ultimately, we just want to say thank you to the community for your continued engagement and the feedback you give us to drive the solution offerings, because ultimately through that partnership, everyone benefits. So today we're going to talk and really spend most of our time showing you the work we've been working on for the 2018 release. And they're kind of organized into a couple key areas. And we'll primarily focus on the new offerings because there's a lot to show you. We have been working on a whole new set of solutions for crime analysis and other public safety workflows, a comprehensive new offering, performance management. We're continuing to invest in the work we've been doing around neighborhood revitalization, and Chris is going to show you some really innovative tools to help you really rehabilitate your neighborhoods and begin to understand the current condition of those neighborhoods, and ultimately some new offerings around public engagement that really help continue to modernize the way you deliver information to the public. So as we've been working on those new solution offerings, we've also been modernizing a lot of the solutions we've developed too. And if you think back a few months, and we're aware we actually shipped about 25 or 30 new configurations of operations dashboard in our April release, March or April release. And our focus this time was modernizing some of our existing geoform configurations and leveraging public surveys and Survey 123 for ArcGIS. And as we're modernizing and adding new solutions, we're also retiring some of our legacy solutions as well too. And in the June release, we'll retire My Government Services, Live, Work, Locate, which are two of our long-standing solutions that we've had. And we have some new offerings that will replace that capability. And we've also been modernizing the way we help you develop new base maps and also hydrate your ArcGIS systems with incident data for law enforcement and fire needs. And so we're constantly evolving the offerings to take advantage of new technology and new capabilities in ArcGIS. So before I turn it over to the rest of the team, let me just start with a quick overview of some of the work we've been doing to modernize several of our key public engagement apps. many of you may be familiar with a solution we had called My Government Services, and that was really designed as kind of a single one-stop shop to provide access to government facilities and kind of curbside services that are available. What we're doing in the June release is actually retiring that solution and replacing it with two new, more modern solutions. One's called My Trash Services, which is really focused on solid waste and other types of services that are available in the community, and it provides a simple way for the general public to locate those curbside services, get detailed information about pickup schedules, and also find recycling centers that are a critical part of our solid waste strategies as well too. We're then also providing another solution called My Neighborhood Services. And what this allows the general public to do is locate government facilities and other services in your community that ultimately increase the quality of life and allow you to brand those services and promote their use throughout your community. The other thing I'll show you in the demonstration and I wanted to highlight real quickly is we've also worked on a new solution for an update, probably more appropriately said, an update to the land use inquiry. And I'll show you that as well too. So as I mentioned, we're constantly trying to evolve these public engagement offerings to take advantage of the latest kind of ways to deliver information and the technology we have. So let me jump out here and let's just show you some of these before I turn it over to other members of the team. Okay, so I'm going to start with My Trash Services. And as I said, this is a simple configuration of Web App Builder for ArcGIS that can be used by the general public to locate curbside and drop-off trash services in your community and ultimately recycling facilities that are available as well too. So I could search, as a citizen, I can search for an address or just poke on the map, and it'll quickly tell me the nearest recycling facilities and give me some detailed information about those facilities, like the recyclables that are accepted at that location. And probably more importantly, it'll also, if we come back here, it'll also tell me the specific trash pickup schedule. And if one of the things we've been working on over the last couple of years is how do we make this more intelligible for the citizens? So what you'll see is that not only does it tell you what day of the week the trash is being picked up, but what the next pickup day is. So we're doing this with some really clever, or at least we think they're clever, arcade expressions that are delivered with the solution, and ultimately it'll look at the day that collection is done in that area and provide the resident who's using the application the next available date, and also accommodate holidays, weekends, and other things that may impact the schedule. So that's My Trash Services. It's a really focused app that allows members of your community to find those curbside and drop-off trash facilities and also locate recycling centers nearby. Let's keep going. The next one is My Neighborhood Services. As I mentioned, this is a configuration of Web App Builder for ArcGIS that can be used by members of the community or those visiting your community to locate facilities and services that really provide a high quality of life in the neighborhood. So much like My Trash Services, I can come in, I can search for an address, or I'll just poke on the map, and I can see a whole variety of government facilities and services that are available in the community. And this is a very simple, straightforward application. It allows you to market the availability of those services, hours of operation, and ultimately, much like many of our other public engagement applications, get direction to that facility. So we've provided a whole host of facilities that are available in this application, but you can obviously configure the solution to provide whatever types of facilities and services that are important to your community and the quality of life you're trying to promote. The last one I want to show before turning it over to other members of the team are the updates we've made to Land Use Inquiry. Land Use Inquiry used to be a configuration of the information lookup web app template, and what we've done in this release is actually modernized it based on some feedback we've gotten from many members of the community. So much like the other public engagement applications, it's a simple way for members of the community to come in and locate, in this case, land use regulations within the community. So I'll just go ahead and poke at the map to find a location. You'll see that it presents a whole variety of different land use regulations that control kind of how the land can be used, everything from overlay districts. In this case, we're in a historic district, or maybe the zoning classification for that area. And what we've done in this release not only simplified the user experience for folks using the solution, we've also provided a pattern with an arcade expression within the pop-up that you can then integrate your schedule of regulations or more detailed information for your zoning that's typically contained in your zoning ordinance and may be available on your public website. And this is an example of how we integrated it with Naperville's Muni Code application. So once again, it's just a much more simplified way to interact with those different regulations that are appropriate to the development of land in your community, and it provides a simple way to kind of reach out and get more detailed information as you find the appropriate zoning classifications and land use. So let me stop there, Heather, and while we're transitioning over to Walt and Lindsay, just see if there are any questions that came up.
There is one question from Richard. Does my trash services and my neighborhood services use the same polygon point data that MGS uses?
MyGov services, probably he's referring to?
I'm assuming so, yeah.
Yep, yeah. The answer is absolutely yes. You can leverage the layers that you've already developed for MyGov services in both of the applications. The only difference, we added the recycling centers, I believe. I don't think that was in, you may have added it to your local configuration, but we did not have it in the previous MyGov services. So we definitely did add some new content, but obviously all the existing content that you may have can be leveraged in these new solutions pretty quickly.
Okay, Jay has a question. We use the Esri Civic Connect web map app, which has trash services information, police, fire, library, etc. Are these solutions replacing Civic Connect? Do you know?
Civic Connect is not an Esri app as far as I know. Maybe a partner that has developed it, but I'm not aware of an Esri app called Civic Connect, so I can't answer that. We'll have to look into it more.
Okay. He said, okay, thanks. That seems to be it for now.
Okay. Take it away, Walt. Lindsay, go ahead.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. I'm Walt, and I want to go over some of the new solutions we have for crime analysis and for law enforcement users this year. As Scott mentioned earlier, this new crime analysis solution that we're going to be releasing here next week or so, a couple weeks, is a configuration of ArcGIS Pro and an add-in to ArcGIS Pro that can be used by crime analysts to conduct a series of crime analysis functions, very specific functions, as you'll see. Wanted to mention that we have partnered with a number of different teams and users across the globe on this particular solution. It's been a pretty good sized undertaking. We work with the public safety team and Esri UK to define the solutions, all the functions in the crime analysis, and a number of users that you can see on the screen here that did beta testing for us both in the UK and the United States. One of the things that we wanted to explain is there were several objectives that we had in mind when we created the crime analysis solution. And one of them is, obviously, we want to create some new capabilities for specific to crime analysis, certified crime analysts to complete their functions. We also wanted to replace the existing Esri UK crime analysis extension, which was an ArcMap extension, and help those users transition to ArcGIS Pro. And we wanted to help the new users that are new analysts that are coming in learn how to take advantage of Pro, some of the capabilities. And then last, we wanted to be able to support larger implementations that have multiple projects or multiple crime analysts in a given location. One of the things you're going to see here today is that the crime analysis, as well as some of the other solutions, are part of a larger law enforcement system for ArcGIS users. So I'm going to jump into it here so you can see what some of the capabilities are. When you install the add-in to ArcGIS Pro, you'll get a series of new functions. And as you open up the project, when you deploy it, you'll see these functions that are available to you. These functions are designed to work in context of how you're using the application. So for example, I'm in the map tab here. If I select on this crimes layer, I can open up with the right mouse click and I can see that there's a new set of tools that have been added to this context menu called the Enhance Attributes tools. There are also some tools that are added to the ribbon up here, so such as the Import Records tools, Select by Date and Time tools, and so on. If I look at some of the other tabs, such as the Analysis tab, I can see that a whole new set of crime analysis tools have been added to a gallery over here so that I can click on them and use them that way. We also wanted to help the existing crime analysts transition to Pro. To make it easy for them, we've also created a crime analysis tab. And in this tab is a ribbon, and you can see that all the tools have been located in one place. They are grouped You can see there's a series of data management tools and so on, selection, strategic analysis, investigative analysis, and then some tools to be able to share that information. So let's start over here with the data management tools. You can see there's several of them in here. And what I'm going to do is just select on this layer. You can see that there's a couple of tools in here that have been used to import data, such as the importing from an address table. So this set of tools allows me to go and grab data that I have in a source file, such as perhaps this CSV table or something like that, and then bring it in and then map it. Once I've done that, then I can do a series of other things with it, such as extract data parts into a field. So if I have a target feature class, such as these arrests, and I select the date field in here, it allows me to break out those dates into different fields, like the day of week, the hour, and the month when that arrest occurred. Could happen for any incident you could use this for. Another one that can be used is the enhance attributes for append polygons from attributes from a polygon. So for example, if I have these police precincts, then I can append attributes from it to the target data set. In this case, it's arrests, and I can select then the list of attributes that I want to append to that point layer. If I take a look at the result of that, I can see then that there are a number of attributes that have been added to this particular layer, this arrest layer, such as the weekday when that arrest occurred, the hour, month, and so on. And you can see down here the station name has been appended from the precinct layer. So there's a set of tools under the data management that can help you accomplish a lot of things to prepare your data for analysis. Now, if we switch over here to the tactical analysis, I'll show you the result of this 80-20 analysis, and you'll see these maps in here that have been included in this pro configuration are there to demonstrate what you can do with the application. In this case here, and I've used the 80-20 analysis, this tool is primarily designed to identify locations that account for a disproportionate amount of incidents, in this case, calls for service. So I can select out a point feature class, which might be the calls for service, and then output feature class, I can specify the cluster size that I want to, and then I can also specify what attributes I want to preserve from that input layer. When I do that, and I click on one of these features here, I can set this particular cluster represents 20 of the calls for service. But what the application does, what this tool does, is calculate the percentage of locations for those calls. In this case, it only represents 2% of the locations. So they're fairly evenly distributed across the area. And then you can see there are 20 calls, which represent about 20% of the calls for service in this time frame. So that's the way to look at to accomplish 80-20 analysis. Another one that we've included in here in the strategic analysis is what we call the incident count tool. What this tool allows you to do is to be able to add up the number of incidents that occur in a polygon or a line feature class, like streets, for example. And then you can also specify a category field. So in this case here, if I open it up, you can see that it not only gives me the total count of these, in this case, we have arrests in each one of these precincts, but it breaks it down by the category field, which is the type of crime that I select, so you can see the number of crimes in each one of the precincts. So that's the incident count tool. Another one in this selection in this group here is called the percent change, and this is a pretty useful tool. This particular map here shows the results of using two tools. The first one I want to show you is another custom tool that we've added to the ribbon, which includes the select by date. And what it allows me to do is to select out a time field and then the type of date. In this case here, we've used the date type, date range to select out a specific start date and an end date. And then we can also use some other options under date for such as like by recency. So if I want to look at the last 24 hours, perhaps I can select that off of the list. Or I can go up and change it and say, oh, I want to compare times such as Q1 to Q2. So I might select something like the last 90 days from the list here, and then use the current time frame as the seed time to be able to compare the time from. And then what it does is it creates an output layer, and it shows us the percentage difference, either increase or decrease, in each one of these precincts from those two time frames. And that was accomplished using the second tool, which is the percent change tool. So I just specify the current time period, the previous time period, which I used in the last step, and then the output feature class, and then it calculates percentages in those key fields that you specify in there. So that's percent change. The next one is the density change, which is very similar to the percent change. The difference in this one is it allows you to take the results of kernel density and compare those two results. So if I've done a kernel density analysis on daytime crimes and nighttime crimes, then I can run the density analysis and see where there are increases in density of those crimes of nighttime versus or decrease in those crimes. So that's another set of tools in here as well. Under the investigative analysis, we have a number of new tools that have been added in here, so you can see. This one here is called the incident sequence, which allows you to compare the count and link up crimes in the order of the date in which they occurred. In this case, we're looking at motor vehicle thefts, and you can see sort of a pattern of where these thefts took place over sequential time. Another one of them in the same group here is called the incident path. Incident path can be used in two different ways, and one of them can be used on a one-on-one, so it uses a common identifier, such as an incident number or something like that, to be able to compare two incidents, account of where something happened. In this case, we're looking at auto thefts, where the crime occurred, where the theft occurred, and where the vehicle was dropped off. So then it can help visualize and share that information with investigators so they can follow up on those leads. Another way you can use the incident path is on what we call a many-to-one. So in this case here, I can look at gang turf areas and see where the gang turf are and link that to where the gang members come from or where which gang members are part of that particular community. So that's another way that you can use incident path. In addition to the analysis tools, we've also included a series of out-of-the-box tools, as you can see across the ribbon here. One of them in here is what we call the data clock, and so I'll show you an example of that one, which is a new function in ArcGIS Pro. In this case here, I've used the data clock as a chart type to show the number of offenses or crimes that have occurred by month or over the period of the last year. So it could be the last 12 months, last 24 months, or however you want. And you can see on a map here that it looks like September and October are big dates for crimes. In December and November, there's less crimes. So that's one way that this particular chart can be used. Another example of that would be this particular data chart, which shows the crimes by the day of week over weeks of the year. So each one of the wedges is a day of the week, and then each ring is a week of the year. So you can see that the crimes increase as we go out towards October and, September and so on, and decrease when we get into November and December. So that's another way to visualizing your data or being able to look at the data that you've already analyzed. So there's a number of tools, and I just went at a high level over some of these tools that are available to you. You can see that some of the tools are using out of the box. They're just putting in one place, so it makes it easy for the crime analyst to go and accomplish their mission, what they need to accomplish, what they need to do. So that's kind of a real high level overview. One thing I'd like to do before I turn it over to questions, I'd like to show you another example of a law enforcement solution that we're going to be releasing real soon. It's called the Daily Activity Dashboard. So this could be used in concert with the crime analysis or with the incident import tools, which you showed earlier. In this case here, if I'm a commander in a law enforcement agency, I might want to come in and look at all the activity that's occurred in the last 28 days, for example, in my jurisdiction, which might be the entire district. And as I do that in this particular configuration of the dashboard, it shows me all the crimes or all the calls that have occurred, crimes and arrests that have occurred in that particular area. But if I'm a precinct captain or somebody like that and I need to know what's going on in my particular area, I can select a precinct off of the list. It zooms into that particular precinct, shows me the number of calls for service, crimes, and arrests. What it also does, it updates these other themes. If I click on these tabs below, you can see that it tells me not only how many calls for service, but what type of call, when it happened, where it happened, and so on. It gives me some information like the day of the week that the call came in on. Looks like Thursdays was a busier day. It also tells me the hour of days when the calls, when we're the most busy, and the type of calls, the busiest calls. It gives me the same information on crimes, so I don't have to change jurisdictions. I'm still in the downtown precinct, so I can look at what kind of activity happened in the last 28 days in this as far as crimes. Again, it gives me the information on each crime and the arrests that were made in that particular precinct. So it's a good way for me to be able to monitor what's happening in my precinct or the entire jurisdiction. I might want to go a step further if I'm responsible for officers. I might want to see what officer number 1840, so select their badge number, and it gives you a list of all the activity that particular officer has been involved in, and you can do this with any one of the precincts. You can see that each one of these can refine down, each one of these selectors are designed to be able to refine down to give you more details, so you can switch them back out if you want to look at all of them, for example. And get back up there. If I want to be able to look at larger patterns instead of an individual thing, such as a precinct or an officer, I might want to be able to look, say, days of the week, for example. We can select that off the list here and say, how are we doing on Sundays? What kind of activity do we have? And I might want to look at such as something like early Sunday morning, like 1 o'clock in the morning, what's been happening. So it gives me a list again. It updates my calls for service, crimes, and arrests that happen in that hour of the day, on that day a week. But it also gives me a breakdown of each one of them, the calls and arrests and so on. So I can get some information on that as well. And then the last thing is I might want to be able to do some things like investigate a particular problem type. Like let's say we have a list of activities in here, crime types. In this case, it's burglaries. We want to see what's happening on Sunday with burglaries, and then we can get a list of those, how many calls came in, how many crimes were committed, and how many arrests were made on that particular day. So there's a number of ways that you can slice up the information to monitor what's going on in your jurisdiction and keep maintain activities in the entire district. So those are a couple of high-level overviews of some of the solutions that we're going to be coming out for law enforcement in the next couple of weeks. And before I transition over to Lindsay, I'd just like to see if we have any questions, Heather, that I can answer.
Hey, Walt,
Yeah.
while Heather's queuing up questions, maybe you can just comment. I think one of the most powerful things about those two solutions is they leverage the same
Good point.
incident data. So maybe
Right.
you could comment on what we've been doing to make that easier too.
Right. So one of the tools that we've been working on as an update is called the incident import tools, or we used to call it incident import tools or import records. And what that allows you to do is it's a set, if you saw it in this, let me just go back here real quick. In here, there's a set of tools that get added to your screen here that allow you to import records from any kind of a source file. So you could have a CSV file, text file, or something like that. And these things, these tools that once allow you to do is set up a configuration file that can be reused over and over. And as you saw in this demonstration here, I used it to populate this layer called Crimes from 2017. That configuration file then can be reused over and over. It can be set up or automated in Windows Task Scheduler to run on a repeated basis, like Sunday morning at 6 a.m., for example. You could also set up another configuration file for things like arrests or calls for service, for example. So there's a number of things that you can do. Once you set up that configuration file, you don't have to do that again. You can just reuse that. Well, that same layer that's used here in crimes is also used in our dashboard, as well as the calls for service and arrest. So the schema stays the same. And those of you that were on the one of our previous meetups saw us demonstrate the new the public crime app and the neighborhood crime reports. The schema is the same for all of them. So the law enforcement system allows you to use that data that's coming out of your records management system, bring it into ArcGIS, and leverage it inside all these applications without making any changes to the schema. So it hopefully will automate that process for you as you go forward.
That's good. Thanks, Walt.
Any questions, Heather, that I can answer?
Yes, there's two. So Emily had a question. Are any of the geoprocessing tools showcased in the crime analysis available with existing out-of-the-box geoprocessing functionality?
Yeah, there's some of them on here are out-of-the-box tools like the add data, add to XY point, geocode addresses. Those are examples. You can see that you have the standard select tools. So if I just go into map, you can see I have the same tools available to me as well here. What we did in the crime analysis ribbon is just add them to the interface so that you don't have to switch back and forth. If you're a crime analyst, this is what you do every day. It just makes it a little easier and straightforward for you to do that. So there are a number of tools, same over here with the create and share. There's a list of tools over here that exist in other places in Pro. So they're just standard out-of-the-box tools that we've incorporated into the crime analysis ribbon.
Okay. Christopher has a question. When selecting date and time, are their inputs limited to file geodatabases? So do these tools work with input data from like Oracle or SQL Server, any of those enterprise type databases?
I can take that one, Walt.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
This is Lindsay. Yeah, so we do support SQL and Oracle and Postgres, but there are a few kind of known issues that we're working through, and we'll improve that in the next release. But specifically with the select by time and date, that will work. The one issue that we're going to fix, just to be full disclosure, is if it's a really complicated or very large, so the bigger the kind of selection, if you put in more and more things, it doesn't perform as well, or it may error out. So we're working towards that, and that should be fixed in the next release. But that's the only kind of limitation on like our DMS, like big enterprises databases for inputs right now.
Great. Jay has a question. He said, in our workflow, we insert and run Python scripts to snap the crime location to the nearest street intersection to help protect the victim. Does this functionality exist in this new solution?
Yeah, we don't have a snap to function, but if you've already done that, you can use that as a source data into these tools. So one of the, I think in particular, you could use incident count, which allows you then to number or give the number of incidents along that street segment. So if you've already snapped it, that's a good good way to use that information that you've already done.
The challenge with that workflow, though, right, Walt, is it may compromise some of the analytical products for sure, because you're basically taking the locations and snapping them, moving them down the street, so to speak.
Yep. So for example, if you wanted to do the number of incidents in a particular precinct and it happened to snap them across the street to the wrong precinct, then it may not work.
Well, the link analysis comes to mind too, right, when you're using it for car thefts and things like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But for this, I should make a point here. Crime analysis and this solution is designed for internal users only.
Right.
Not for the public.
Okay. Christopher had a question. Will there be requirements for hosted services or by version of ArcGIS Enterprise to use the new dashboards and tools? Essentially, what are the requirements?
Yeah, so you'll need Pro 2.2. You'll need the add-in, which is designed to work with the new version of Pro. And you'll probably want to upgrade to version 10.6.1 when it's available.
Okay. And do any of the new crime analysis tools consume credits?
Yeah, the only one that really consumes credits when you run it by itself is under the enhanced attributes. There's one here called enrich layer, and this then by default goes out and gets layers from the Living Atlas or wherever you're going to get the data from, and enriches your point features. So yeah, if you use that one, it would use credits, and it tells you it does this, by the way, too.
That's all the questions for now.
Okay. All right. Well, I will stop sharing and transition over to Lindsay, and she can share with you what she's been working on.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. Okay, so thanks, Walt. So the fire incident dashboard is a configuration of operations dashboard for ArcGIS, and it also has an ArcGIS Pro toolbox that can be used by fire service personnel to load incident data from record management systems and kind of help visualize those key activities. So I'm just going to jump out and show you. That didn't work. Hold on. There we go. Sorry about that. All right, so this is the fire incident dashboard. And this is designed really for the chief, the precinct captain, the lieutenant of your fire service, or anybody kind of in that supervising capacity. And really what this is going to help them do is visualize what's happening within their jurisdiction. So if you're the chief, you're going to be interested in how your whole district is doing. If you're the precinct captain, you're going to be more interested in your precinct or your station jurisdiction. And so when I come in here, I can take a look, and the first thing I'm going to see on the right-hand side is response times. And so we're very concerned about response times when you get an incident or call that comes in. And we can see here that the average turnout time is around 1 minute. And that's great because that's within the accepted window of response time for turnout. And as we go down and we look at travel time, so the actual time from traveling to get to an incident is within that window. And then the average total time for the whole city is within that defined window as well. So in terms of performance and response times, right now we can tell really quickly with the fire incident dashboard that we're performing well. Now, if I'm a precinct captain, I may want to interrogate a little bit deeper. So I want to come in and check out fire station number 7. I want to check out calls in the last 30 days. I could, if I wanted to, do year to date or kind of have a select range of dates, but for now I'll check out the last 30 days. And really what I'm interested in is, if I come down to my chart, I can see we've been having a lot of medical units deployed by fire station number 7. And this is a more commercial area, and so we tend to have more medical responses, but I just want to kind of isolate that a little bit farther, see response times, and I can see that the station is taking the most medical calls and has the most medical units being deployed from that station in the community. And our response times are all still really great. And so the fire incident dashboard kind of allows you to check out those types of incidents, the number of incidents, as well as the responding companies, the number of units deployed, and the response times. And so this is all really great. And what's really cool about this is it uses the same tools that Walt was just talking about, the record import tool set. So you have incident data that comes in the form of CSV or of a spreadsheet. So all the 911 systems, they kind of output there. There's no geographic data. So how do you get that into a dashboard like this? How do you have geographic context? And so this is what it generally looks like when it comes out of the system. You're going to have IDs and codes, addresses, the call dates, the dispatch time. So all that good, rich information that you saw on the dashboard is actually here in text format in the CSV. And so what we do have is we have the XY coordinates. So sometimes content management systems have XYs, sometimes they have addresses here. And so we have tools that you can use in ArcGIS Pro. And they take advantage of, they will actually geocode or put those on a map. So you can take your CSV, and you can see I've done this here, and this is the configure your record import. And you also have the target layer here. So you can create this configuration file, and then you can actually run it with the import records tool, and that is going to update the incident layer. So you can imagine that you can do this on an ad hoc basis, or you could kind of schedule this. So you can get the output from your record management system, have a scheduled task, and then it's going to push it up to your layer, and you're going to have up-to-date data in your fire incident dashboard all the time. And so what's nice about this is that regardless if it's XY coordinates or your actually addresses, that the tool is going to handle that for you. And so this toolbox is available for the daily activity dashboard, and it also is part of the crime analysis. So you can see that many of our tools kind of take advantage of using this tool, and it's a great way to kind of get table or spreadsheet data into your GIS and then visualize it. And so this is the incident dashboard, and I'm going to throw it over to Chris Fox to talk a little bit about performance management. Actually, is there any questions on that?
No, there's no questions.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. So I want to take some time to talk about the new performance management solution. So performance management is a configuration of operations dashboard for ArcGIS that can be used by government agencies to monitor key performance metrics and communicate progress made on strategic outcomes to the general public and other interested stakeholders like the mayor, city council members, and department leadership. These dashboards leverage authoritative data sources in your organization, both facts and feelings, and can be easily configured for the strategic outcomes and performance metrics that you've identified for your community. So we worked very closely with the City of Austin's Office of Performance Management to gather the initial requirements for these performance dashboards. And during development, they provided a lot of great feedback that we incorporated into the dashboards themselves. And as the solution matured, we also presented them to King County, and they provided a lot of excellent feedback as well that we've incorporated as much as we could into the dashboards as well. So a big thanks for them for partnering with us on the development of these solutions. So performance is measured using metrics and are organized into a series of dashboards categorized as community indicators and their related community contributions. So community indicators measure things that are often beyond the direct control of the government agency, but they impact people in the community, and they are a good indication whether the quality of life is improving in the community. Community contributions measure a government agency's contribution towards the stated strategic outcome. So these metrics likely involve data that is collected by the government agency, and they illustrate whether the agency's programs and policies are positively moving the needle on one or more community indicators. So the performance management solution comes with a community indicator and a community contribution dashboard for 3 strategic outcomes. There's economic opportunity and affordability, or measuring whether everyone should have access to, the outcome is saying that everybody in the community should have economic opportunities and resources that enable them to thrive. We also have health and environment, stating that everyone should enjoy a sustainable environment and a healthy life, both physically and mentally. And there's also public safety. Everyone should feel safe in their home, at work, and in the community. So these dashboards are all inspirational examples, and they were developed using strategic outcomes that the City of Austin has identified. These are 3 of the 6 that they've identified. But after you deploy the solutions, you're going to need to configure them for your strategic outcomes. And we've designed them so that they can be easily configured to take advantage of the contributions and indicators that you've identified for your community. So if we take a look at one of the dashboards, this is the Economic Opportunity and Affordability Community Indicators dashboard. Each dashboard is going to have a similar look and feel. They're all built on basically the same template, just configured to show different information. So there's a map in the center showing the current selected geography that we're looking at the performance of, and it's surrounded by 8 panels, and each panel is composed of 3 stacked elements. So the current tab displays the most recent reported value for a given indicator. So in this panel, we're showing unemployment rate, and we can see for December of last year, we had when we measured this. So essentially, this is a metric that's recorded annually. So for 2017, we were saying that the unemployment rate for the city of Naperville was 3%. We're also at the bottom of each of these indicators giving a quick visual cue that indicates whether we're meeting, in this case green, we're meeting the unemployment target, or down here you can see that we're not meeting the percentage of population who are spending more than 50% of their income towards housing. We also have some indicators on here that we don't have a target associated with. I think median home value is a good example. It's something that we're interested in, and we're measuring it annually in this case, but we're not setting a target specifically for that metric because there's not a real great target value that we can associate with this particular metric. The history tab, if we take, for example, on graduation rate, if we take a look at the history tab, this displays the performance of the metric over time. So the actual value here is displayed as bar charts, and our target is shown as a line chart. So in this example, we have a kind of flat target of 95% graduation rate across the community. And we could see in some years we were achieving that and meeting that, and some years we weren't meeting that goal. We can also, in these performance dashboards, do something like this that's driven by the data. For example, in unemployment rate, we decided in 2016 we were going to start to improve our unemployment rate and set more aggressive goals for what the unemployment rate should be in the community. And here we have a target for next year. We haven't recorded what the unemployment rate was for 2018. We'll have those numbers at the end of the year, but we've already set a target for it. So you can set future targets in the dashboard so you can give goals of what you're trying to achieve. And when you're communicating that to stakeholders or members of the community, that'd be really useful information to understand that we have aggressive goals to improve the performance within the community. And then finally is the detail tab. This is where you can provide additional context for the metric. For example, how is it measured? Where is the data coming from? And why is it important? This element supports rich text, so full HTML. So it allows you, in addition to text, you can embed images or hyperlinks to external sources or sites to give more context about that particular indicator. Another key thing about the dashboard is we're using geography to organize the indicators and provide a sense of place. So each dashboard allows the users to visualize performance for the entire community. So by default, we're defaulting to the city of Naperville. But I could also look at things, for example, if I'm a city councilor, I could see how my district is performing. And as I select the different geography, you can see the values updated, and they were dynamic. So you could see for city of Naperville, when I had that up, we are actually meeting the goal for unemployment rate. But if I look specifically at Council District 1, we're actually above, we're not meeting the unemployment rate target. So it's dynamic in that case. For the public, they might be interested in how their particular neighborhood is performing. So I can zoom into a particular neighborhood, and now I'm seeing how that neighborhood is performing relative to the same indicators that I've identified for that strategic outcome. If we look at the example of the community contributions dashboard for that same strategic outcome, you can see it's a very similar look and feel. We have the map in the middle. I can select the geography, and we have 8 different panels with different contribution metrics that we're measuring. But these metrics are all around things that the government agencies are doing to move the needle in a positive direction towards achieving economic opportunity and affordability. So how rapidly are they approving commercial use plans within the community? How many businesses, local businesses, are they supporting? How many homeless individuals have they offered assistance to? Many of those numbers that go along with the particular policies and procedures that they're implementing to improve economic opportunity and affordability. The last one I want to give is talk about is, again, here's another example for the public safety community indicators dashboard. It's not just about pure numbers like we had before was, unemployment rate, graduation rate, homeless individuals. Those are all kind of metrics, facts that you can measure in the community. Sometimes it's about measuring feeling or perception in the community. So in the public safety example, we're showing how through a community survey, you might ask residents within the community to indicate whether they feel safe in the community. Do they trust the public services? When they submitted a emergency request, was the response timely and effective? And so we can then begin to measure some of the feelings or perceptions in the community, as that's just as important as some of the actual numbers that go along with it.
Hey,
the last
Chris,
thing
before you go there, one of the comments we got is, someone wanted to see the health one. Can you poke at that one?
So if we look at the health community indicators, here's some of the examples that we've pulled, and like I said, we took these from the city of Austin. These were some of the things that they felt were important to evaluate, but each community is going to differ, the types of things that they're interested in. So you can certainly configure these dashboards to highlight the different indicators and contributions that you feel are important for your community. But some of the health ones are infant mortality rate, residents with heart disease, uninsured residents. We're also looking at the carbon footprint for the community. How many good air quality days do we have in the previous year? Here's a sentiment one. So what percentage of people feel satisfied with the parks and rec services in the community? So there's an example of health one. We also have the health, community contributions, and these are some things like what percentage of our energy are we is actually renewable that we're making available to the community. What percentage of trash pickup are we able to recycle? What's the water use per capita? Things like that. In the last thing that I want to show is a configuration of ArcGIS Hub demonstrating how a government agency can educate the general public on these strategic outcomes. So whereas those dashboards that I was just showing might be used internally by stakeholders within the organization, you could see something like this being available to the public to explore and understand what the government is doing to make the community better, to make life in the community better for all residents. So as we scroll down, we see some high-level stats, and then we start to get to some of those same strategic outcomes. So here's economic opportunity and affordability. We're describing what that outcome is and why it's important. And then we have a slightly different view of the same dashboard that I showed here. It's a new dashboard that I've configured to obscure the map and just highlight the 8 indicators that inform on that strategic outcome. And in the same embedded view, I can explore how different neighborhoods in the community are performing, and the numbers update to reflect that neighborhood. If I'm interested in learning more, I can always click the Learn More link, which pops open the full version of the dashboard. So then I can start to see the map and really explore the history associated with the different indicators and get more detail about the particular metrics as well. So this particular site is currently just an inspirational example that we're going to be providing a try it live version on the ArcGIS solution site. But we're working on an ArcGIS Hub initiative for performance management that we're targeting for later this year that you'll be able to use to deploy a public engagement version of a performance management site similar to this one that I'm showing. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions while we transition to Chris Biscaglia.
There's no questions right now.
Okay, cool.
All right. Thanks, Chris. I just want to kind of wrap up the conversation today talking about some of our new neighborhood revitalization offering. And it really has there's a couple main objectives to the work we've been doing in this area. One of them is to minimize the amount of resources and time that's required to assess property conditions. We also want to help communities understand neighborhoods at risk in both positive direction and negative. And I'll talk about our solution that we've been working on for June in that area. We also want to help communities target code enforcement, other stabilization program activity, and be flexible so any city can actually go and use some of these solutions to help. So what we've done is we've built a series of configurations with ArcGIS Pro. We've made some improvements to our photo survey solution. We'll talk about those. And we're introducing a new solution called Neighborhood Early Warning for June, and we're also going to be enhancing that as we go forward over the summer. And we also have some partners we've been working with on this. So we partnered with Data Driven Detroit. We've done some work with Microsoft on our photo survey solution. And then we have some cities that we've been working with to gather feedback and help us improve it over time. We also want to solicit other cities to kind of help us with this. So if you're interested in that, just let us know, get you involved, either with the new solutions that we're releasing or future offerings as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out just to kind of quickly start. I'm going to jump right into photo survey. This is a solution that's currently available that we've had for quite a bit of time, which helps cities and communities collect street level photos and then do a very focused property condition survey. And it's worked really well. I guess one of the challenges here is that you still have to do this kind of manual survey process to assess the property condition, property by property. So what we've tried to do is enhance this solution, and what we've done is we've built some tools inside of Pro So I'll go ahead and open those up. This is our new property condition survey solution, and it includes some new tools in addition to the standard photo survey tools that help you take your street level photos, process those photographs, and then publish them, but then go ahead and actually perform some image recognition AI work to them to determine some of those property conditions that you might be interested in. So we actually have a task here inside of Pro that allows you to do the same thing that Photo Survey did, which was to publish your photos, street level photos, assign them to properties, and then go a step further and try to identify certain categories of property condition that you're interested in. So we have our photo points layer here, and I can choose from, at the first release, 3 categories of blight concerns or property conditions that you're concerned about. So overgrowth, graffiti, and boarded windows and doors, and run the tool. And this actually connects up to Microsoft's Custom Vision service. So you're going to need a Custom Vision account or an Azure account. And there's actually a free trial for this too. So if you want to give it a whirl against some neighborhoods within your city or community, you can do that. Provide that Custom Vision key, which is provided by Microsoft, and we actually have some instructions on how to get that. And what you end up with is a probability score of those conditions based on those property photos that you've already processed. So the outcome of this is a blight probability dashboard that takes those scores that's been generated by that image recognition machine learning toolkit provided by Microsoft, and shows you which properties, which properties that have street level photos have the highest probability of boarded windows, graffiti, and overgrowth in this case. So you're seeing a photograph here of a property that's come back with a 93% probability of overgrowth. If you dig into that photo a little further, you can see the photograph that was taken at the street level, and then this one is obviously showing that particular condition. You can go back to the dashboard and also get an overall probability score based on these 3 conditions of where you might have kind of hotspots of activity, areas that you might want to focus in on, target code enforcement or other stabilization activities in these areas. So we actually provide you a nice, just simple heat map showing you where the highest concentrations of these conditions exist. And this is all based on that same work that we've been doing with Microsoft to take those properties, train a model, and then present the results back in ArcGIS that show you where the highest probability of those conditions exist. And we're also going to continue working on this. So if there's any other conditions that you might want to look for, we've looked at things like damaged roofs. Those are a little bit more difficult because you might not get a full picture from street level. So we're also thinking about using ortho or oblique imagery to do other condition probability scores. So think of roof conditions, maybe improvements in the rear of the house that you can't see from the front, and that kind of thing. So we're looking to improve this over time, but we will release a first version of this that look for these 3 categories for June. So we're pretty excited about that. So that is our improvements to photo survey. And we've also been working on, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, a new solution offering called Neighborhood Early Warning that helps you take point-based indicators and try to understand or score neighborhoods that may be trending in a positive or negative direction based on condition. So what you can see here is a pro project with a series of ArcGIS tasks that help you organize those indicators. So we've come up with a collection of indicators you're going to need to supply to do this analysis. For instance, demolitions, blight violations, vacant properties, construction permits. And there's a list here of those indicators. Process those indicators into a general positive change and negative change index score. So you can see here, we're showing the positive change index, which shows you neighborhoods that might be trending in a positive direction, and the darker blue are those areas. So this will be a pro project that includes a series of maps to kind of help you identify at-risk neighborhoods. At the first release, we're going to have a really nice positive change index map for you ready to go. We're going to work on the decline or negative index kind of going into the summer. And this is another solution where we want to gather some feedback from cities and communities all over to help us refine this as we go. And again, this will be available in later this month. So those are the two areas that I wanted to talk about. Does anybody have any questions on those?
There are no questions.
Okay.
Cool.
That's all I had. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
So we'll just wrap up and then take any further questions you may have. And we'll do that just by highlighting some of the events we have going this year at the user conference. So this year we have about 13 tech workshops and 9 different demo theaters that are spread across both new and existing solutions we have. We've also got a solution island area in the exhibit area that's actually right next to the information booth. So if you are at the user conference and in the exhibit area and you want to stop by and say hi or ask a question, we're right next to the information booth on the main island. And let me just quickly show you, we'll post this on the Meetup site as well too, but if you go to GeoNet and search GeoNet, you can find actually a complete list. If you go to the user conference section under documents, you'll see that our flyer is there that has all of our UC 2018 activities. We'll post a link to this on the Meetup, and I think we've already sent it out to the Meetup mailing list, email list, but ultimately you'll see all of the sessions we have highlighted here in this. So it's a real quick at a glance way to find the sessions you might be interested in attending at the user conference this year as you're building your schedule. And just to close then, we are continuously evolving our plans for the solution offering. And I guess what we should do, Heather, before we talk about the road ahead, I think I forgot to do this earlier. Why don't we see if people would mind just taking a quick poll and giving us some feedback on what they saw today, and then we'll just wrap up with the road ahead. If you don't mind, can we do that real quick?
Yep, sure. This is the first time we used a poll, so it should be interesting.
We're really stepping out this time. So if you don't mind, take a minute and just tell us, like, what were you interested in today? What solutions might resonate with your community and be important to your organization? And that we'll use that obviously to drive feedback. And ultimately, if you want to connect with us on any of the solutions that we developed today, certainly don't hesitate to reach out to us on the Meetup site, and we'll get back in touch with you because we can share more details with you individually if it's something that's really pressing for your community. Maybe give it another minute or so, and then we'll just wrap up with.
Can you see the poll as well, Scott?
Yep, I can.
I just checking.
Hopefully everyone else can too. Yeah. All right, you want to shut her down, Heather?
Sure.
So we'll just wrap with the road ahead. So we've talked a lot over the last year about the solution deployment tool and how that really transformed. And Walt, Chris, and others talked about that today, how you can use the deployment tool to deploy these solutions in your ArcGIS organization. And for us, that's just a stop in a larger journey that for us ultimately means we ship the solutions as part of the core product. So one of the big areas we're focused on the second half of this year is just continuing to evolve that simplified deployment approach. And we've been working on some new technology we're kind of tentatively calling the Solutions Deployment Gallery, or essentially what that means to you is the solutions will ship directly with the product, and you'll be able to understand which ones you've deployed in your organization, deploy new solutions, and just make it much easier for you to take advantage of the solutions that are available with ArcGIS and deploy individual offerings or comprehensive offerings like we've talked about today. The other thing we'll mention is Chris alluded to this a bit with performance management, and we're doing it in some other areas where we're actually working with the ArcGIS Hub team. Is that showing up? Is that blocking the slide for you guys, the polling thing? But we're ultimately working with the Hub team to drive out some initiatives and continue to improve the public engagement offerings within ArcGIS collectively. And we have a backlog of new work that we're thinking about and enhancements to existing work in the areas of public safety, planning, assessment and taxation, and public work. So what you'll see is us continue to work to simplify the way you take advantage of the solutions and how easy that is for your organization. and then at the same time adding new capabilities and new offerings in the solution as a whole. And some of those new offerings will leverage emerging technology, like Chris talked about today with the machine learning, and others will address new workflows and provide comprehensive offerings for that. And then lastly, we are constantly evolving the existing solutions. And this fall, we'll take a closer look at some of our ArcMap configurations we still have and think about how we might be able to take advantage of ArcGIS Pro, which we are doing in many cases throughout the offerings and with every new offering, obviously, that we showed you today. And we'll be looking at some things like the geoform configurations we have and continuing to move those forward and take advantage of some of the new capabilities in Survey 123 when appropriate. So we're constantly kind of maintaining those, and we'll be updating many solutions. So that's a quick overview of the road ahead. And I guess, in closing, we can take a minute and I guess give you guys a chance if there's anything that you think we're not working on that we should be working on, or if you have ideas for new solution offerings, or as I mentioned, are interested in any of the things we showed today, don't hesitate to mention it on the chat window. Or if you want to just send us a note, that's fine too. But with that, I guess I'll close, Heather, and give everyone last chance to ask any questions they may have.
Sure. I'll just wrap up, and then if there's anything that comes up, we'll definitely answer those questions. So thanks for joining us for today's meetup. We look forward to seeing and hearing from you at the 2018 Esri User Conference. Hopefully you'll show up at some of our meetings or some of our presentations, or even our island as well. So it doesn't seem like there's just a few comments.
Okay.
Krista said she would like to learn how to set up the fire incident dashboard quickly. Is there a tutorial?
Well, there definitely will be documentation when we ship on the solution site that you can take advantage of, and it'll be available in the solution deployment tool. So after we release in the next couple of weeks, June 26th is the tentative date right now, you'll be able to quickly deploy a fire incident dashboard like Lindsay showed you in your ArcGIS organization. So it's coming, just a few weeks away.
Great. With that said, I guess have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.